they tell you that long enough, you begin to kind of consider it. So then you finally get released, and you go for the job. You finally decide you're going to transition and do what's right. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to pay bills. I'm going to be responsible. And you go to try to get employed, and the employer says, man, you got that felony. I can't hire you. Again and again and again. And then your family and friends may be looking at you like, man, when you going to get a job? When you gonna go to work? How hard have you been looking for a job? It's your fault. People are getting hired all the time because your family and friends are oblivious to that. They haven't been to prison. So what you gonna do? And when you get some time to yourself, you hear those people in prison, those programs. You hear your family, you hear society, and you hear all these voices in your head, and you start to doubt yourself. And you say, maybe it is my fault. And when you start doing that, you're taking steps away from society, constantly isolating yourself back towards prison. You're not really paying attention to it because it's kind of subtle. And next thing you know, you're right here at the prison gates again, and you're like, man, I could make some quick money. I could do something real fast to fix the problem. And if I get away, great, and if I don't, great. It's my fault anyway. And I met a multitude of guys that come back and forth to prison all the time with that mentality. Now here I am, I haven't been released at this point, so I say, man, why'd you come back? Man, I tried, it's rough out there. And I'm saying to myself, it ain't that rough because whatever's going out there is not as bad as what's going on in here. I don't care what you say. Okay, now I'm out. And I say, Dad, what those guys were saying is not that far-fetched. And I hate to admit that. And I got a great support group. Probably the best you could imagine. But every time I take a step to do the right thing, there's somebody in a uniform, a suit and a tie, in a position of authority, sitting high, looking low, saying, how can I help you? Well, my name is so-and-so and so-and-so, I'm from so-and-so and so-and-so, and I'm trying to get, say, my driver's license. Well, it's your fault you don't have your driver's license. Why you don't have one? Well, I just got released from prison, blah, blah, blah. Prison? Oh, okay. I don't need to hear anything else you got to say. I already know what to tell you, because you don't know. And here we go again. It's a slippery slope in your head that you don't want to contend with, but it's always looming, it's always there. And when you come home from that trip to DMV, sometimes your family and friends are saying, hey man, what happened? That's a progressive step to get your driver's license so you can get a job. What happened? Why didn't you get them? Well, the people said this, this, and this. Well, why didn't you have those things ready in place before you went? And here you go again in your head. It's like it's a recurring theme again and again and again. And if you don't have a strong post, if you don't have a lifeline, if you don't have a support group, if you don't have a friend, if you don't have somebody sound in mind enough to say, hey, relax, settle down. This is a part of the process. I got your back. It's very easy to make that decision, to slide back and say, it's a lot simpler in here. Now, how can that affect anybody in this room? It's easy. Because if I go back to prison, that puts an undue burden on society, on my family, on my community, in ways that they don't have any idea where it's affecting them. Everybody pretty much thinks that if I go to prison, it hurts nobody but me. But that's not so. This is a big deal, and there's a lot of tentacles, it's intricate. And we would love to think that it affects nobody but me, but that's just not the case. And that's why, at this point, prison is a hot topic. But on the other hand, to business minds, it's all profit, 100% profit. Because when you get to prison, you don't need an ID. All you need to do is be exhaling and inhaling and they're going to profit off you. Through the medical system, through the prison enterprises, it's big business. It's on the stock market. And it's not going to the stock market if it wasn't profitable. In saying all that, I have been released after 24 and a half years in prison, and I haven't been home 4 months. And every day is overwhelming because as a 45-year-old male, black male, faced with a constant reminder that I have a felony, that I've been gone for over 2 decades, it's overwhelming. It's like a kaleidoscope of situations that have to be managed and negotiated in ways that I never had to do when I was incarcerated. Prison is one dimension. You don't have to think, somebody thinks for you. You don't have to decide what to eat. You don't have to think about if I want to take a shower or a bubble bath. It's all set out for you. You don't have to think about toiletries. You don't have to think about soap, toothpaste. You don't have to think about much of anything. TV is scheduled, all of that. So when you get released, you got to think about everything you do. You constantly told when to go to bed, when to get up. So you're very handicapped from go, because the idea is you couldn't manage your life. So we're going to manage it for you. It's kind of like an infant again. So when you get released and you have all this time to manage for yourself, that itself can be overwhelming. Man, what do I do now? Where do I go? And the biggest thing blinking in my mind is job. Get a job, get a job, get a job, get a job. And really, after all the time you spend in prison, you're kind of tired of working, because prison was work. Hard work, trying to endure it, trying to survive it. When you get out, you just want a time to relax, take a breather, and soak it all in. But society, sometimes family, loved ones, like, hey, you gotta start looking for a job. So not having anybody to talk to, not having any place to go with how you feel in yourself, most guys tend to go back to what they knew: drugs, alcohol, hustling, crime. That's where they feel they belong. And it saddens me because so many people with so much potential resort back to that in return. And they try to explain to me that I'll see it, you'll see when you get out, you'll see if you get out. And to punctuate what that means, I had a natural life sentence, which meant I was never supposed to get out of prison, ever. But by the grace of God, I got parole. And I've been home close to 4 months now. And I have my sister, my mother, I have an immaculate support group. You can't get a better one, but it's still tough. And I think about the guys who have no family to go back to, who have nobody to encourage them, who are going back to a system of statistics that constantly tell them you can't manage your life, the best place for you is back in prison. And they return. And they understand why they return. So, in saying all that, if anybody has any particular questions, none are off limit. I bid you to know that I answer all questions in truth. I pull no punches. Prison has kind of nurtured that into me. It pulled no punches with me. Doing time is not for the faint of heart. And it's very important that I use my experience as a bridge to educate and inform all those willing to listen. And along with that, I brought a dear friend of mine with me, Kenneth Lee, who has a unique scenario himself, who's been on both sides of the fence. He's been a Gulf War veteran, he's been a correctional officer, and he's been a resident inside of prison. He's done some time with me, in other words. So he knows the system in ways that I don't know and don't want to know. So any questions that we can answer, we will gladly answer them, because we understand that if we don't talk, what you hear is probably a lot of conjecture.
William,
Yes.
can I expound on something that might add to your problem?
Yes, sir.
I spent 42 years in prison. I'm 75 years old. In 1985, here's what a federal judge said about me. In view of the defendant's past record, the court hopes by this sentence to prevent his parole ever again. It is quite obviously that he could not function in a free society. It is a fear of this court that should the defendant ever be released again, someone will be killed in his next bank robbery. It is my recommendation that the defendant never be paroled. I've been out 14 years. When I got out in the halfway house, I rode the buses in Raleigh and getting off at every construction site to get a job. Working in construction, $8.50 an hour. Well, I left that because I met someone and I went to work for a son and I got a better job and a better hold on life. I didn't meet the obstacles that you're meeting. In federal prison, when you get ready to get out, they take you to get your driver's license before you get out. So you'll have a driver's license. But after I retired from that job in 1997, or 2007, I traveled around the country, bought an RV and traveled around the country 5 years with my wife. I came back, I was bored, I couldn't get a job in safety like I had before. So I said, okay, I'll go to school. I went to Durham Tech, 2 years, graduated with double honors with a degree, paralegal degree. I can't get a job as a paralegal. Basically, my age has hurt me more than my criminal record. But I was able to go back in the family, so to speak, and pick up, and I'm working right now every day. Thank God I have that behind me. But I can't get a job as a paralegal. I put in probably 1,000 applications in the last 2 years. And as far as ban the box is fine. You check, no. Or the box is not there and you don't have to answer it. But if you check the box and you haven't had a conviction in the last 7 years, they may call you for an interview. But that criminal record is going to come out. It's going to come out. You're not going to be able to hide it because the box says, have you had a felony conviction in the last 7 years? So you might say no, and you're not lying, you haven't had it. But when you get there to get that, try to get that job, that criminal conviction is going to come out and haunt you. Mine will probably haunt me the rest of my life. I'm not giving up trying to get a paralegal job. I pursue it every day because I'm not doing what my heart wants to do, which is post-conviction work and that type of work and paralegal work. So, while you've got a rough road ahead of you, but having been in the state system here in the 50s, and in the federal system in the 60s, 70s, up to 2002, believe me, I'm not going back there.
Amen to that. And in no way at all am I suggesting that that's an option. And I hope I don't sound like I'm condoning the mentality of guys that feel like because it's so tough, I'm going to take the option of committing a crime to go back to prison. Just because it's tough doesn't mean it's worth the fight.
Right.
And I'm one of the guys that's definitely going to make it without going back to prison because I made my mind up about that. I don't make any excuses. I'm not delusional about reality. And I will say this, and it's not your fault or mine, you being a white male and me being a black male are two totally different experiences.
It's true.
Absolutely true. And you'll be faced with things that I never will, and I'll be faced with things that you couldn't even imagine. I had a job in work release in prison. I did my last year and a half in work release at a slaughterhouse. First job I ever had in my life. Full-time job. I made, say, $8 an hour. After I got my check and returned to prison, you have to pay the prison room and board. After I paid room and board and transportation, I would say after a $320 a week check, I might have saw $60 out of that. That's what I brought home. Now, what's encouraging about that? I'm working just as hard as anybody else. I'm in this privileged work release situation where I leave prison, I go work a real job, not a prison job. It's not a good job, it's a nasty job. I work at a slaughterhouse, hard, messy, stinky work. And when I see my check, I only see $60 out of that. But society would think you on work release and you in prison, you don't have any bills, you should save plenty of money. But that's not so.
Right.
When I get released from prison, even if I wanted to keep that job, I couldn't, because they would actually bump me back to part-time hours, because the only perk for that job to hire me while I'm an inmate is they don't have to cover my medical insurance. So it's a perk to hire me. But when I get released from prison, it's a detriment to keep me, because now they have to pay for my medical insurance. So all they give me is part-time hours. And at $8 an hour, trying to commute, I don't have a driver's license now, because it's not like in the federal prison, they're gonna take me to get them. The commute to work is not even worth part-time money at $8 an hour. But I'm constantly told it's my fault, and I'm ungrateful. So the only thing I'm trying to bring light on, I guess, is the psychological struggles that we all go through, people, period. And because of what this is about, I'm trying to help share with people how tough it is mentally for a person that is incarcerated and that's trying to transition out. Imagine having children or a spouse to take care of under that mindset. I looked at men in the face that have really committed their hearts to do what's right. But as he said, Dennis Gaddy, who I know personally, quoted, when you make what's really right to do very, very hard, it's easy to go back to do something wrong. As a man trying to have a sense of dignity when you can't take care of yourself and your family. I don't condone it. I don't justify it, but I do understand it. And as best I can, I stand in the gap for the guys that are still there, that I keep in touch with, and say, hey man, when you get released, you're going to have trouble getting your social security card. You're going to have trouble getting your driver's license. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be seamless. But here's what you're going to be faced. You're going to be faced with many people that are mean-spirited, that are going to remind you of prison authorities, because they're going to look at you and say, man, how you 45 years old and you never had a job? Where the heck have you been? How does that happen? What do you mean you need a social security card? Where have you been? And you're constantly telling your story. Hey, my name is William Elmore. I've been in prison for 24 and a half years. And over and over again, you'll find yourself constantly repeating that. It gets redundant. It gets condescending. It gets dehumanizing. But hey, man, I tell fellas all the time, in letters and on phone calls, it's a part of it. And you got to be willing to face that so you can move ahead. Don't think it's going to disappear.
See, the one difference between me and you, I was my own worst enemy. See, all the way down that line from the early 50s until 2000 or 1985, I was responsible for my actions all the way down. It wasn't anybody else's fault. It wasn't because I didn't have a chance. I went to a halfway house in 1997. I robbed the bank while I was in the halfway house. I went to the halfway house in Raleigh in 1985. Robbed the bank, kidnapped the manager while I was in the halfway house. That's not trying. I wasn't trying. I just took all caution to the wind. And then I finally one day, I just woke up and snapped. I said, no, this is not me. I gotta change. It wasn't easy, but I was able to do it.
What was your name, sir?
Ray James.
Ray James. Thank you for sharing your story.
I want to open it up to questions for William, Daniel. William threw Kenneth under the bus if he wants to chime in too.
No, it's like you said, you know, my perspective is definitely different because I was a correction officer, I was a criminal justice major. One thing about being a correction officer and being on that side is I have an understanding of how they train correction officers and what the mentality of a correction officer is. And I'm not gonna go deep into it, but I'm gonna give you an example. Well, the first thing they teach you when you're a correction officer is those are animals. Pretty much. That's how it's those they're thinking 24 hours on how to outwit you. So make sure you're on your P's and Q's. So as a human being, you always say, man, I want to go home to my family at night. So now you automatically looking at this person differently, automatically. Their punishment wasn't for what I do for as men's correction officer. Their punishment was from the judge, so I supposed to be just for policy. But as I'm thinking, you know, man, I'm here with this guy, and they don't supposed to tell you don't supposed to know these guys charges for reasons of what I'm just saying, so you don't think about or get on your mind, well, I better watch him. But when you're going through training, they're constantly telling you, hey, this guy's this guy's that. And what people don't understand about, he spoke on guidance counselors. They don't have college degrees. They don't, to be a guidance counselor, you can go right from a correction officer and a job and go get the job. So now you, like he said, you got somebody telling you how you supposed to live your life. They're probably tired because they overwork, because they got a caseload, and he can say that they got a caseload, so many inmates that's on it. So they pretty much got to set, hey, you need to do this. All right, see you a month from now. Do this. Have you, okay, you did. And it becomes overwhelming for them also. And the money that a correction officer makes is no money. And just like you said, I'm a Gulf War vet. I was 43 years old when I went to prison. So from age 0 to 43 years, I went to the Persian Gulf from 90 to 94, got a Medal of Honor. I worked all my life. I was a college athlete, correction officer, bail enforcement officer. But I made a choice at 43 years old, and I went to prison. I did my 3.5 years, paid my debt to society, as he said. And let's not sugarcoat it. When they charge you, it is what it is. It's just like you walking into Walmart and buy. They charge you for it, so you have to pay for it. So we pay our debt to society. But when you walk outside that prison, no matter what you think you've done, or all the things you think have took place, when you walk outside that prison, it's a whole nother world. Because everything that I say I've done, Gulf War vet, criminal justice major, bail enforcement officer, that none of that matters. None of that means nothing. Because I have been on interviews to look at the guy, look at my, and I had a job for Frito-Lay, 8 years I did that job. I had a guy look at me and say, man, the experience you got, okay, I'm gonna hire you. And they said, well, and like he said about the box, it might not be a box, but what he's gonna say is, well, why you got this lap in employment? Well, sir, I did make some choices in my life. You try to talk with, sir, I made some choices in my life. Well, okay, well, what was it? And I was charged with this. Man, you got a felony. It's over. It's done. So I've been out since September. I am not working right now, and it's like you said, I have a son that went through college, and like he said, I do have a family. I did have a son. I do have a son and a wife. So, you got to look every day at your family and say, man, I'm putting in these applications. I went and got my CDL permit. I've done everything in the time since I've been out to try to, like you said, better myself, and them stats blew me away because I didn't, but it makes sense. I mean, there's nothing right now based on, I guess, everything I've done with the 8 years of driving experience, and now having my CDL license, and still, as of right now, the door gets slammed in the face. But one thing I can honestly say is because of what's happening right here, I think things are trying to change, because not only as black men we know we're going through, but white America, there's a new set of people coming up to understand what's taking place now. They say, you know what, it's not about white, it's about human. These are human beings. So, if they pay their debt to society, as y'all talking, and we got things and we need to put things in place, people are starting to see what's taking place and understanding that if we don't give them something or something to go to, then this recidivism rate, which is in North Carolina, is like 80%, the highest in America. They're going to go back to prison. And like he said, it's just, it hurts everybody, because, when I go to prison, I'm not, what a lot of people don't understand, his family was in prison too for 24 years because his family did everything they had to do to make sure he was all right. So they did that time with it. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Your family is doing time when you're in prison also. So don't think for 1 minute you're in prison by yourself, because they got to come and see you. They got to send you money. They got to take the time, you know what I'm saying, to make sure, like you said, things are try to set up, I was, unfortunately, my mom passed away while I was in prison. This is how prison works. I didn't go to the funeral. I never seen my mom again. That's prison. That's how prison works. You know what I'm saying? She had cancer before I went in, and I had, under the lawyer that I had, I was thinking, he had me thinking I was gonna at least get to go home, and it didn't happen. But, and I go back to what he says. I don't blame nobody for what I done, because I did make a decision to do it. But this is what I will say: once I've done what America says and pay my price, when I come back up, where is that second chance at?
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen it, you know, and I'm actively looking, and I have, like I said, I was a HVAC tech in the military. I got certifications while I was in prison, and still nothing yet. But I'm patient, and I'm just like him. I never go back to prison, because for a lot of guys, you know, it was funny. I was listening to him talk a lot here. A lot of guys say, "Oh man, I can do another beard standing on my head." Well, I can't. It was punishment for me to be away from my family. But some, like he said, some guys don't have structure. So prison, unfortunately, to some people is better, because you got to understand. And this is a whole nother subject, I won't go deep, but homelessness. You got guys that's homeless that come back to go to prison, they got a bed, they got somewhere to eat, so it's actually better for them. But with somebody like him and like me with structure and wanting to do better, that's punishment. It was punishment for me. I can't speak for nobody but me. It was punishment. And like I said, not accounting for the things that I lost that I'll never see my mom again other than the picture. She's gone. You know, but you know, that's what it is. But all I asked is that second chance, you know what I'm saying, or that pay your debt to society and you get out, and that's all I'm looking for. You know, nobody owes me nothing outside of that second chance, because you say I'm supposed to have that, but unfortunately in America it's not happening.
You had a question.
I was just wondering if you guys know of any reentry programs, be those like ministries or transition houses that are effective, that aren't effective, and then beyond those like more institutional ways to help, like how churches can help more. We don't talk about this stuff very often, so like how can we come around people who are reentering and support them?
As someone that's, since I've been incarcerated, I've gotten very much into my faith, my relationship with God, and in times I've experienced interaction with different churches. In minimum custody, churches interact most with inmates, because the custody level is so low, they can actually spend more time. And it's been my experience, and it's been my consensus with other guys, that most of the churches, I would say at least 70% of the people that come into prisons and pose that question, how can I help, already have their own agenda about what they think you need. They ask the question, it's in a beautiful package, but when you unwrap it, they already have their mind fixed on, I know what you need. And if you just come to church, you'll be fine. And that's such a marginal part of the picture. Very few people listen to what the inmate has to say about what they need, because everybody has unique needs. They have different situations. Some are husbands, some are fathers, some are not husbands or fathers. So when an inmate is faced with that, in their head, here you go again, telling me what's best for me. So internally, they do this. They isolate themselves because nobody's listening. And maybe I don't know what I need, but if we have a conversation and you listen a little more, I can come to that. So anybody who's thinking about coming into an institution or interacting with someone that's either incarcerated or freshly out of prison, I think the first thing to do is do more listening and ask more questions than any step, because the needs vary. It's easy to have a canned remedy because that's simple. You know, send all of those people over there in Haiti after the earthquake, send them some meal, send them some socks, send them some t-shirts, drop it out the helicopter, and get the head back and let them fight for it. That's the same demonstration, if that makes any sense. So when you come in, especially if you call yourself coming into prisons in the name of God, you have to come truly open in heart to listen first and do what you can without being sucked in. Because you have a lot of people in prison that are predators in more ways than one. That love for churches to come in, so because they don't feel genuinely cared for, so the idea is I'm gonna get what I can from you because you got an agenda too. And nothing really gets done. So the dialogue is necessary in church first, before you even start taking steps toward the prison. And it has to be a real dialogue. And it'd be beautiful if the dialogue can incorporate people that have already been in prison. It's easy for people who've never been in prison to talk about what they think prisoners need. That's just a conversation over coffee and tea and brownies. But, you know, bring some guys or some girls that's been in prison to the conversation. And not necessarily to a church service, off the record. It could be in the church, but off the record, we want to talk to you about what you need. Because I'm positive that a lot of these people in these churches who don't want to talk about it, they know somebody who's been in prison before. It's just quiet as kept. Because my percentages might be off, but at least 70% of people that are incarcerated are going to get released. It's a high number that's going to come out sooner or later. There's very few that are not coming out. Very few. So, in other words, the dialogue has to be authentic and genuine, and it has to be discussed in a way that's not formal, in a way that's really real, and then we can start making steps, incremental as they may be, toward helping people. Because as an inmate, if I feel isolated or disconnected from society, it makes it easier for me to convince myself that I can't reoffend. I don't feel bad about harming you or stealing from you when I feel like you don't care about me. That's not right, but it's easier for me to think, I don't mind stealing your car or breaking into your home or harming you. You don't care anything about me. You close the door in my face. Every time I try to do the right thing, you close the door in my face. So if that happens enough, guess what? I'm anti-society. Now I become your problem. On any given day, I am your problem. Never seen you before, you've never done anything to me, but in my mind, I'm going to become your problem because I think you're my problem. Because you remind me of a society and a world that says, I thought I paid my debt to society. I did 24 and a half years day for day like they said, and this how you going to treat me? And I'm trying to do the right thing, you won't even give me a chance? I got to eat. I'm not going to starve. You got a store. I'm going to come in and get me something to eat. If I go to jail, what the heck? If I don't, I'll be back and get it again tomorrow. I'm not saying any of that is right, but that's the mindset.
That's reality. That's the reality of it. You know, like you said, not that it's right, it's the reality of it.
And unfortunately, the people who sit way up here and make all these decisions with legislation and policy, they feel like it's not my problem because I'm sit up here and it's not going to affect me. Until it gets up there. Trust me, when these legislators, congressmen, when one of their kids go to prison, for whatever it may be, people come in rooms, they close doors, and they shake it up. They change things. But when I go to prison, what happens? Well, hey, you did the crime according to the law. You got to do this time. But why wouldn't some of their loved ones go to prison? Hey, let's look at these books. These laws are old. They get old all of a sudden. We need to change that law. That's not fair.
Yeah.
So, as the minister said, it should just be called the legal system, not the justice system, because there's no justice at all.
Well, I think that's a good place to end this session, but that doesn't mean we have to end this conversation. I encourage you to continue talking. I want to thank Ray James, Kenneth, for adding your voices to this conversation.